Okay, I just want to start off today just welcoming everyone to our talk on cyberbullying at the workplace and at home. Okay, welcome. So first off, we're going to start just with the agenda and some house rules. If everyone could keep their questions till the end, you're welcome to pop them in the chat as and when you have them, and I will address them towards the end. Okay, so today we're just going to go through an introduction as to what cyberbullying is and the stats globally as well as in South Africa. We'll then go a bit more into your forms and the impact of cyberbullying, how to prevent it, what you as the individual can do, what your employer can do, and the importance and future of cyberbullying. I just also wanted to ask kind of who's more interested in your cyberbullying at home or cyberbullying in the workplace. If you want to just pop that in the chat, then I can also speak a bit more to that as well. But you don't have to, it's not compulsory. Okay, so to kick off today, we're going to start off with what is cyberbullying. So cyberbullying is the use of electronic communication to harass, intimidate, or humiliate someone. Now, specifically with the topic we're going to cover today, we're going to unpack that a little bit more and go into a bit more detail as to cyberbullying at the workplace and cyberbullying at home. So cyberbullying at the workplace is the use of technology to harass, intimidate, or humiliate a colleague or an employee. It involves the use of your electronic communication, such as your emails, text messages, instant messages, social media, or any other online platform, but it has that deliberate impact on the individual. Then at home as well, it's once again the use of technology to harass, intimidate, or humiliate someone, but this is in a domestic setting, such as between your family members, your partners, and even roommates. So now we know what cyberbullying is, but now we're going to dive into a bit more of your stats globally and in South Africa. Okay, so when we're looking globally at cyberbullying, we can see it's a really prevalent kind of topic to be discussing, because you see here 75% of adults have witnessed cyberbullying. So this could be that they're not sure what they were seeing was cyberbullying, or they're not sure what to do about it, but 75% have witnessed. Now, to take that a bit further, we say, okay, well, you've witnessed cyberbullying, but how many of you have cyberbullied? And that stat is 69% of people have admitted to having done something abusive towards others. So globally, 69% have cyberbullied, which is really such a shocking stat. Okay. To go a little bit further and divulge a bit further into these stats, we can then look at a bit more globally. So teachers are now seeing that is the number one fear that they have for their children that they're teaching, or their students. And if we look at this holistically, we can kind of understand where they're coming from, because in today's times, children are using laptops, they're using iPads, tablets, schools have Wi-Fi, everything is being done online. And the bullies can now just hide behind all the technology. Your teachers don't know who is bullying in some instances. We can also see that 75% of online bullying occurs on Facebook. So also, once again, looking at it holistically, Facebook Messenger is the number one used social media platform. Overseas, they don't really make use of WhatsApp. So we kind of justify why it is so high. Then the last global stats that we're going to look at is victims of cyberbullying are more than twice as likely to self-harm. So now we've seen that there's such an impact that cyberbullying has, as well as a lot of people are experiencing and teachers are fearing for their students of cyberbullying. Now, those kids are now twice as likely to self-harm as what they previously were. Okay, so this is globally, and now we're going to zoom in a little bit more onto South Africa specifically. So in South Africa, we have some stats. They might not look so shocking just from a brief overview, but let me just explain. So 20% of South African employees have witnessed workplace bullying. Okay. So that might not seem a lot at the beginning, but South Africa is notorious for underreporting. So that 20%, if we were to report accurately, you're looking more at around your 40 to 50%. So half of South Africa's employees have witnessed workplace bullying. As with that in mind, we're going to go to the next stat. So 3.41% of workplace bullies are managers or supervisors in South Africa. So once again, the underreporting will play a big part in this. But also, I'm going to give you some other stats here. So if you're looking at a company that has between 50 to 100 staff members, 5% of those staff are managers or supervisors. So with that in mind, the stats of 3.41% of managers are bullies is ridiculously high. So 3.41% out of 5% are bullies. Okay. But also, on the other hand, in South Africa, we can look at your children or at home. So 51% of children in South Africa have been cyberbullied. And that is just going to increase and increase as we're bringing your tablets into schools, as Wi-Fi is being handed out in schools, as well as, once again, with the underreporting, you're probably looking at about 70 to 80%. And another thing that we haven't really instilled in our children, and that we as South Africans need to have a look at and include it in the syllabuses or just bring that awareness into schools, is 43.5% of children are willing to share their personal information. So to sign up for a game, they might require your name, surname, etc., your email address and cell phone numbers. And children are willing to give that up because they just want access to the new cool game everyone is talking about. So that is something that we need to look at and start educating our youth on. So now we've spoken about like all your stats and everything, and we're going to dive a bit deeper now into your forms of cyberbullying. Okay, so cyberbullying takes many forms, such as like your instant messaging, your emails, social media, text messages. There's quite a lot. So to go into this, I'm going to use two scenarios. The first scenario is going to be at the work, and the second scenario is going to be cyberbullying at home. So when we're looking at the first scenario, so just some background, we have Karen, Tom, and Sarah. Now, Sarah had to submit some documents, but she missed the deadline for some reason. Karen then got a mail to say, just to let you know, we'll not be completing the project in the designated time period as the correct documents were not submitted by the agreed upon period. Karen then forwards this to Tom and says, looks like Sarah really dropped the ball on this one. Guess we'll just have to pick up the slack again. So Karen's being rude and being behind Sarah's back. But it doesn't stop there. Karen then posts on their WhatsApp group the screenshots and again says, looks like Sarah really dropped the ball. We're going to have to pick up the slack. So as you can see here, there's various forms of cyberbullying. So it's over mail. It's also here over WhatsApp, on a group where they can be mean about Sarah, everyone in the team. But then Karen also goes a step further to post on Instagram. This means it says, yes, if you could do your job, I'd really appreciate it. And hashtag Sarah. So Sarah sees all of this. She sees the group she's not on WhatsApp. It's open on everyone's laptops. She sees Karen posted on Instagram and says hashtag Sarah. Okay. So that's our first scenario, and we're going to unpack it just now, both scenarios together. So the second scenario, we have Amy. So Amy is a 14-year-old girl, loves spending time on social media, but she's recently started to realize that her cousin Karen is starting to cyberbully her. So we see here, Amy posted a photo on Instagram, and her cousin comments to say, "You look so dumb, lol." So Karen's been really mean to Amy. She's posting hurtful comments. She's making fun of her appearance and even creating fake profiles to impersonate her. And Amy doesn't feel like she can go to her parents about this. Okay, so instead, she starts to avoid social media, spends most of the time in her room, her grades start to slip. Her parents start to notice, she's becoming more withdrawn and irritable. Okay, so in both scenarios, we have your different types of cyberbullying that we have spoken about, and they have similar impacts, but also slightly different. So to unpack the impacts that they have, we have Sarah and Amy here, and these are all the impacts that they can experience. So cyberbullying in general can cause stress, anxiety, and depression. And there are many other causes, but these are your top 3 causes of cyberbullying. So with Sarah and Amy in mind, we can see that it causes stress. Amy's stressing about what is her cousin posting that she's not aware of. Sarah is stressing about what are they saying about me. And that stress can increase anxiety and depression. Now, when our anxiety and depression increases, that can then cause physical health symptoms for us. So some of these physical health symptoms can be headaches, sleep disturbances, so you're not sleeping a lot or you're sleeping too much, back and neck pain, becoming shy and withdrawn. And we saw that with Amy. She went off social media, she stayed in her room. The next one being becoming moody, agitated, anxious, and stressed. So there we see again, your stress is going to increase. Attempts to self-harm, that's once again, we spoke earlier to the fact that those who are being cyberbullied are twice as likely to self-harm. And that can be caused by your increase in depression. And lastly, taking more sick days. So you're not feeling well, you haven't slept well, you have all these headaches and neck pain. That would lead to you taking more sick days, not being around as much, your work piling up, which then, the cycle keeps going because then your stress and anxiety increase and you'll be getting more of the physical health symptoms. Okay, so now that we've looked at the impact on Sarah and Amy, what is the impact that the workplace has? So the impact of cyberbullying at the work could be various things, but your top 3 being decrease in morale. So your toxic work environment, which can make your employees feel unhappy, stressed, they can be demotivated. There might be a culture of bullying and harassment within the organization. And, kind of just that fear among your employees, which in turn can also lead to decreased productivity. So if you are being cyberbullied or you feel that it's not a very conducive work environment, you'll be less productive. So you won't go out of your way to help your clients. You'll do the bare necessity to get through the day. Now, having staff that are experiencing a decrease in morale, a decrease in productivity, they're not going to feel like this is a very conducive and healthy work environment. So they might start looking outside, looking for new companies to join. And that will then lead to your increase in staff turnover. And we all know that staff turnover rate, the higher it is, the more expensive it is for the company. They're constant looking for new employees, training your new staff to where they need to be. That can end up becoming very expensive to the company. So how do we prevent this? How do we prevent, that high increase, the decrease in morale? Well, there's 4 ways we can do this. So firstly, create a clear workplace policy on cyberbullying. So your policy should outline what is cyberbullying and what are the consequences for engaging in cyberbullying. Then we can also encourage an open and a supportive workplace culture. So that's encouraging your employees to speak up if they are being cyberbullied, and your employer should create an environment which you as the employee feel safe and comfortable enough to report cyberbullying without fearing that there's going to be a retaliation of some sort. Thirdly, we can look at training. So this is training your new recruits on cyberbullying, as what it is, and we'll go further into that a little bit later. So as well as having constant training or annual training for your staff on what is cyberbullying, and just bringing that awareness to all staff. Then lastly, with the prevention strategies, we can look at creating a culture of respect. So this means promoting a positive behavior, encouraging respectful communication, and modeling an appropriate online conduct for your staff. So now by creating this culture of respect, we can prevent cyberbullying, but also creating a safe and a supportive environment for everyone. So these are the prevention strategies at the office and at work that we can look and try to put in place. But there's also prevention strategies that we can put into place at home. Okay, so how do we prevent and support our children as well as our roommates and our partners? So what we could do is create clear rules and expectations. So this can go around your use of technology at home. So these can be your rules about when and how devices should be used, the type of behavior that we feel is acceptable, and consequences for violating the rules that you have put in place around technology. We could also monitor technology use. So particularly this is around like your teenagers and your children, and just be aware of behavioral changes. Like we saw with Amy, the behavioral changes are also a giveaway that there's something wrong. So if your child goes from always on social media, always on their phone, to no longer on their phone, they're playing outside or talking with you more often, and you just notice that change. Cyberbullying could be, I'm not saying it is, it's one of the telltale signs that you can then investigate. Our next point that we're looking at is educating your family members. So educate them about the risks of cyberbullying, the consequences thereof, and also encourage that open communication about what are they seeing online, how do they feel when they're online, just understanding and educating your family. Next, we move on to promoting empathy and kindness, and this goes with everything. So encourage kindness, encourage empathy when you are interacting with each other, and also encourage that positivity, whether your child is talking to you online, whether they are talking to you in person. That should go for both ways, online and in person. And we see when you are kind of online, there's kind of a mutual respect with most people. They'll be kind of back in return. Then we look at user privacy and security settings. Now, most social media platforms have privacy and security settings in place. And one way to prevent and to support your child is just to make them aware of these settings, help them to put these in place, but also just to tell them and educate them about not adding people that they don't know. And that also how to go about reporting. So you've got everything in place, but also if someone you know starts to cyberbully you, how do you then contact the appropriate authorities or report it on the various platforms? Second to last, we speak to encourage responsible online behavior. So this again goes about don't accept friend requests from people you're unsure of. Have a look at as well if you think, maybe I know this person. How many followers do they have? Is it a brand new profile? Just having a look at all those sort of aspects before accepting. Then lastly, seek support. Make it clear to your family members, your child, if there's something that they want to talk about, they're welcome to come and speak to you about it, talk to their friends, their professionals that they can speak to. And just also, I'm going to speak about it more in the next slide, the laws that cover cyberbullying and who they can go report this to as well. So with that being said, we then go into your employer's responsibility and all the acts that there are to help and support victims of cyberbullying. So we have your Protection of Harassment Act. So this is, oh, sorry, I think I lost you guys. So this is where your victims of cyberbullying in the workplace are able to potentially sue your perpetrators for damage, that being emotional distress and loss of wages. And this all falls under the Protection of Harassment Act. The next one is the Employment Equity Act. And this says that cyberbullying can be considered a form of harassment and discrimination. So it prohibits your unfair discrimination and harassment in the workplace, and that your employers have a legal responsibility to prevent as well as address this behavior. The next act that we can also look at is your Cybercrimes and Cybersecurity Act. So this will then cover you for distributing images without your consent, as well as any conduct that caused mental harm, fear, or distress to another person. Then the big one is when we look at your labor law. So now your labor law in South Africa says that employers have the right to discipline or terminate employees that engage in cyberbullying in the workplace. And if this behavior did occur outside of work hours, the employer should follow the proper disciplinary procedures. Okay. Then the last one that we look at is your regulatory compliance. So there's various industries where it is regulated, such industries such as healthcare and finance, where kind of your privacy and confidentiality are crucial. So now we know there are various laws in place to protect us from cyberbullying, but at work, we need to take it a step further to say, okay, well, let's implement policies so that are aware of kind of cyberbullying and what we define it as. So we're going to have a look firstly at why is it important to have cyberbullying policies. So firstly, prevention. Having a clear policy in place will create a kind of a clearer expectation for the employee's behavior and defining what cyberbullying is. Creating awareness, so you'll emphasize the seriousness of cyberbullying, and as well including things like responsibility. So who is responsible to prevent and address cyberbullying? Consistency is ensuring that all cases are dealt the same way. So no two cases will be dealt with separately. Every case will be dealt the same way and also outline how it will be dealt with. Compliance, like I said previously, for some industries, it is needed and it is a compliance regulatory requirement to have these policies in place. But also support, so that your staff know where they can go for help, who they can talk to. So do they need to go speak to their managers about it? Or would they have to go straight to HR, as well as is there such a thing like ICAS within the organization that they can go and speak to? Okay, so now we've looked at why is it important. Now we move on to what should be included. What do we need to include in our policy when we're creating it? So we need to define what cyberbullying is. So clear and concise, it needs to include the behaviors, such as when we mentioned earlier in the actual definition. So you need to have your behaviors such as harassment, intimidation, and humiliation included. You also need to have a scope. So who does this policy kind of apply to? Is it just employees? Is it contractors? Does it also apply to your vendors? You need to kind of define all of that. Prevention. So this is, what are you going to do to prevent cyberbullying? Are you going to have training? Are you going to send out clear communications every month on cyberbullying and etc.? So you need to have a clear plan of what you're doing. Then we look at reporting. So once again, this is how do you report cyberbullying? What are the channels you have to follow? Do you go to your manager? Do you go straight to HR? You need to have all of that stipulated, as well as investigation. So how will a cyberbullying incident be investigated? And you need to have this set out so that for every case, it will be done the same way, and that your employees are aware of the steps that will be taken and what is required of them. You also then need to include your consequences. So what disciplinary action will be taken? Is it termination? Will legal action be taken? All of that, so that not only those who are reporting cyberbullying will be aware of what will happen to their perpetrators if they are found guilty, but those who are cyberbullying will also be aware of what will happen to them if they are caught cyberbullying. Then lastly, we can also look at within policies, what support is there? So earlier I mentioned ICAS. I know quite a few organizations have them with regarding to mental health. Also, does HR, will there be counselors available and etc.? All of that will need to be outlined in these policies. Now, what if you don't have a cyberbullying policy? What do you do as the employee if you're being cyberbullied? And this doesn't just go around at the workplace. This can also be applied to at home as well if you're being cyberbullied. How do you respond? So firstly, don't respond. If you're being cyberbullied in a personal capacity, I know it's easier said than done, ignore, block, don't respond. But if this is, for instance, an email from a manager coming through, and there are certain aspects of the mail where they do require your information or information from you on a specific client, etc., take a step back, go for a walk, go grab a cup of coffee, come back, and respond only to the relevant parts of the mail. But then more to, as the next point says, save the evidence. So create a folder in your inbox and just save this for later. And like I said, if this is in your personal capacity on Instagram, Facebook, block them. You don't have to speak to them. As well as if it's let's say your manager messaging you on Instagram, block them. Instagram is not a platform that your work or your employer will typically use. And there's no need for you to have your coworkers on Instagram. You're under no obligation to follow them back or respond to their messages. The next, we can also report the incidents. So like I mentioned earlier, all your apps should have a setting where you can say report bullying or report inappropriate behavior. So report them, take screenshots, report, block. That's the way to go. Seek support. So if cyberbullying has continued and you've blocked, you've reported, but the bully keeps creating new accounts and keeps messaging you, seek support or consider legal action. So you can go for counseling. A bit later, I'm going to speak to your resources outside of organizations that can help. You can also go to your manager or HR, depending on your cyberbullying policy that you have in place, and report. But also remember where I spoke to the different laws, they are there to help you, and just to do some research, look up and reports, block, all of that. So now as well, we have the future of cyberbullying. So what does that look like? What does the future look like? Now, we can't say for sure exactly what the future will look like, but we can have a look at sort of what we are seeing so far. So we are seeing an increased use of digital communication. So this is, cyberbullying has kind of, there's various channels that you can use, and due to this increase in digital communication, there are so many ways that your bullies can now get a hold of you. And because of all of this, new forms are coming up. So you can now email someone, you can WhatsApp message them, you can Facebook message them, you can Instagram direct message them. There are so many ways. And because of that, new forms are coming up. So with every app we are seeing, every app leads to a new way to cyberbully. So we need to be cognizant of that when we're downloading a new app. So we saw specifically during the pandemic, we had Signal pop up, Calendar pop up, House Party. All of those were new ways for people to cyberbully. So when you're downloading a new app, just think to yourself, am I being bullied? How can I be bullied? Let me put the privacy settings in place to prevent this. Something else that we are seeing is the blurring of professional and personal boundaries. Now, this also links with the pandemic. When we went into lockdown, a lot of companies then required us to use our personal devices. So we then had to, our cell phones were no longer our personal. It was work, personal, everything. Our laptops we started using, our Wi-Fi we started using for work. And now it's really hard to get out of that and go back to purely separating the two. So that blurring of personal and professional is also creating ways for cyberbullies, and kind of your new forms are being done through work that way. Then the importance of a prevention and a response strategy. So it's becoming more and more important for our employers to put in these strategies. So creating the policies, sending out mailers or updates on the policy, and just educating their staff around cyberbullying. And this can also link to that blurring of the professional and personal boundaries. We need to be sending out information on, how to separate them again, how to keep your personal on one side, your professional on the other, and just ensure that no cyberbullying is done, and that no managers are cyberbullying you after hours, or if they can't get a hold of you over WhatsApp, then they'll phone you. If you don't answer your phone, they're messaging you over Instagram, and we need to once again separate those. So we need to, within the policies as well, include kind of what apps are work related and the rest need to be personal. And you need to think to yourself, do I need these people on my personal apps? Do I need my manager on Instagram? Do I have to add everyone in the office to my Facebook? These are the things you need to start to think of. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are also, if this is a problem, where can you go and speak to? Who can you speak to if it is in your personal capacity? And there are various resources available. So while you can speak to them about your workplace problems as well, you should rather go to your manager, go to HR, and if you feel like that's not helping, you can reach out to SADAG, which is the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. You can also reach out to Lifeline. These are all forms of counseling that can be had over the phone. You can also book appointments with them. Then you also have the next three, which are your Cyberbullying Research Center. So this organization will provide information and resources for you on cyberbullying. It'll give you advice, specifically around for parents, for teachers, and for victims of cyberbullying. Then you have your NPA, which is the National Prosecuting Authority. So this is all around your cyber-related crimes, and they'll help the victims of cyberbullying to report the offense and to seek legal action. Then lastly, we have the police, SAPS. and they'll help you then to report and press charges against your persecutor. Perpetrator. So yeah, that's it from me around cyberbullying. Does anyone have any questions for me? Okay, I just want to have a look. If I'm going to pop my email address in the chat. I know around this topic, some people will want to remain anonymous or not send through some messages on this forum. So you're welcome to pop me a mail at any time or give me a call. I'm happy to help, assist. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, I'm going to stay on the line for another 5 minutes. You're welcome to have a chat with me, pop the questions, or just pop me a mail. Hi, I see Jerome has a question. So to answer your question, Jerome, cyberbullying is something very new that we are seeing. So the authorities have realized, and that's why we have our act that has come into place now in 2019, that it is something that they do need to start taking more seriously. So if you were to report it, it would be taken seriously. I have heard that there have been 1 or 2 convictions, but let me research that too. I'll pop you a mail with some links to some of the stuff that we are seeing. Jerome?
Thanks for the answer. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
Cheers.
Pleasure. Bye. Okay, great. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to pop me a mail or a Teams message, and I will be happy to help and answer as best as I can. Okay, have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Jace. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.